I feel like I'm with some hot like comic book turned real life sci-fi movie. Like if I knew any of them to reference, I would say I just
Are you
don't.
talking
I
about
don't.
me?
You are such a character right now.
Thank you. Andrew was like, "Are you trying to be an anime girl?" I'm like, "Well, it doesn't help." Hold on, hold on.
What?
I literally was wearing my anime sweatsuit today before I got ready.
Hello and welcome to Frequency Broads. I am Victoria.
And I am Tara. And let's begin by grounding ourselves down as we always do. And today I'd like you to take your hands and cross the fingers together, interlock the fingers, that's the word I'm looking for, and place it in your lap. And what we're going to do is 3 rounds of a breath where I'm going to count us to raise our arms, keeping them interlocked but palms up, all the way up to the sky as we inhale, and then flipping the palms down and pushing the energy down into your body as we exhale, with the visualization and concept of gathering love and energy from the earth and pushing it down into the body. So let's just take a quick releasing breath together to get ourselves settled as we set our hands in our lap, fingers interlaced. Inhale and release it out. And I will count us off. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Placing both hands on your heart and feeling that earth energy fill up your body with all that juicy love. And before we get into anything today, speaking of love, we just want to send a huge thank you for all who are back for episode 5. Thank you for listening. Thank you for opening your heart and giving us feedback. We are just so grateful to be on this journey with you. I know we're still tweaking things out as we go and figuring it out, and we're so happy you're along with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. It feels so good to be at episode 5 and to be sinking deeper into the frequency that is Frequency Broads.
Yes.
And welcome if this happens to be your first time joining us. I know that relationships are something we all face. We all get to experience for better or worse.
And I'm happy you're a part of this relationship that is the community of Frequency Broads. And Victoria, I'm happy you're in this relationship, this partnership with me as well.
Thank you. I'm honored to be your partner in frequency crime.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about my favorite topic of all time ever. Relationships.
Relationships.
And I got a lot to fucking say. And there's so many different avenues we can take this. So let's just center ourselves so we don't get all tangenty. And anything come to mind for you?
Oh, what didn't come to mind? First things first, I would love to kind of bounce off of last episode, because once we literally like hour after we were done recording, they were like, hey, here's another thing. And it was to kind of reference and talk about how relationships go through cycles. So kind of bridging the 2 episodes together. So I'd love to touch on relationships and cycle, relationship to yourself. I think that's really important. And kind of like the shadow that plays into relationship as well. What were you thinking?
Well, shadow is kind of what I was thinking. I'd like to talk about the attachment styles, primarily anxiety, and how we can learn to work with the anxiety we feel when dating or in a long-term committed serious relationship. Um, so attachment styles, love
Ooh,
languages.
my favorite. Before I get into relationship cycles and what brought me, I thought it might be interesting to start this podcast with a very, very, very brief description of what. Let's just look at romantic relationships, because we all have friendships, we all have situationships, we all have coworkers, right? Give me a little insight, give the people a little insight as to your, like, quick blink of your romantic relationships throughout your life, I guess. Like, what kind of, how long have you been single or with someone, and yada yada?
Me?
Yeah. Well,
I'm like, I've
you.
already revealed enough. I have been single for 4 years. I was last in a relationship with a narcissist, and it took me a really long time to heal from the reality he created for me that I realized wasn't a real reality.
Mm.
I can say I'm one of those women who is happily single, who has found success in her career, deep embodiment, sense of self and sensuality, purpose. I'm on a mission. I feel really good being alone.
Hell yeah.
However, I love my people. I need my people. And that's why I'm here doing this earth thing. And I love to love. I'm here for the love in all the ways that it shows up.
Yes. One more question for you. And this is something I genuinely don't know. Did you have a lot of serious partners? Because if we're talking about relationships, is this coming from experience? Did you have a lot of serious partners prior to this
Oh
past
my
one?
gosh. Thank you so much for asking. Yes, I'm a recovering serial monogamist, and I've been in a relationship in probably 2 to 3 year increments since age
Holy
12.
shit. Since age 12?
So being single for the past 3, 4 years is actually like a huge accomplishment for me because I have always been in partnership. I love being in partnership.
Wow. I did not know that about. Well, I mean, I knew you. Yada yada. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
crazy, dude. Since
It
12?
I don't think I've ever really did the math or
Ooh.
said it out loud, but yeah.
So when Victoria's speaking, she's speaking from experience.
Yeah. I mean, I got a little bit of that.
Whew. I guess I'm kind of the opposite from you. I
On
had my,
brand.
yeah, on brand. I had my first boyfriend when I was, besides my like boyfriend in 5th grade. Shout out Adam, love you. Still one of my best friends. But my first boyfriend was in 8th grade for like a year and a half. He's also like a chill dude. We were friends for a while. Then I had a high school sweetheart, and then I was single for like 4 or 5 years. And I loved it. I was like, I'm going to handle my shit. I am going to learn about me. I'm going to rank that list up pretty high. And then I thought I was A-okay until I actually got into a relationship. And I was like, oh my God, there's all this other shit that I didn't know existed. But then I had not so great relationships after that, 2 pretty shitty relationships. Just drop it here real quick. The one before Andrew had an abortion. That was tough. We ended soon after that. And then Andrew and I got together, and we were together for a little bit, broke up, got back together. And we are now, like, when this podcast comes out, maybe a week prior to our 6-year anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Wow.
So the complete flip, whereas you were together with a lot of people and now you're single for years, I was single for
Mm-hmm.
years and now I'm together with someone for like
Mm-hmm.
ever.
And it's interesting to be in the like late 20s, early 30s time frame of either being single or in a relationship, because it's such a pivotal time when I think we really step into our embodied feminine,
Mm.
formerly
Oh,
known
yeah.
as womanhood. But I think we're starting to reclaim that and look at it a little differently.
Right.
What's been coming through really strong for me on this topic of relationships is polarity and feminine and masculine.
Mm.
And I know this could pop up in any number of our episodes given the topic, right? Because we do live in this world of polarity and duality. And as Tara's probably mentioned in the past, that it's an energy, and there's no denying that we all have feminine and masculine energies within us. And for anyone who doesn't identify with a gender, I just want to say that you have allies in us. We love you, and I'm
Hell yeah.
so impressed by your courage to tune into what's true for you and then to speak it out loud, because for so long we weren't, as humans, allowed to do so, right? Like, we would be burnt at the stake, we would be jailed, we would be this or that. And now we're entering into this time frame where many of us, fortunately, many of us do not have to fear for our lives for being who we are. And I also want to recognize that many people do live with this fear. And I think that one way that I've come to find safety within myself is creating this home within myself. And of course, tuning into the masculine and feminine energies within me and how they come to play at the table.
I love that we talk a lot about, and the spiritual community in general, the masculine and feminine. I'm so glad that you brought in the people who do not identify as either or those in between. And I think it's still important to recognize that we do have both of these energies within us. And that's why your identity is fluid. You can just align with who feels true inside yourself, because we hold both of those energies. So it makes sense to be able to say, no, I don't identify as this, or I identify as something different, because it's just tuning into your authentic self, that authentic frequency. And I can only imagine how scary that truly is, because I've only tasted that fear. My family has been very open. I have, queer people in my family left and right. And even myself, it took me forever. And there are some people in my life that still don't know that I, identify as someone who's bisexual. And for years, it was so hard, because I was like, oh, my sister's a lesbian and I'm straight. And like, that's the identities that we are. And I can't sway from that. And then, of course, lucky for me, like most people, I didn't recognize or fully accept that until I was already in a long-term partnership with a cis male. So what's the point of even coming out and being like, hey, I'm bi? But, I've been with women, so who the fuck am I kidding, right? But it was still so fearful for me. So like Victoria said, give yourself a pat on the back, just even if it's still a struggle, just showing up as you, or even discovering who you are in the first place, because it's hard when everyone's telling you you should fit in a box. It's really hard. So good shit, humans. Good shit. We're going somewhere.
I will always, always encourage each and every human, or remind them, I suppose, it is your body, your choice. I am so grateful to have been raised by a mother who preached that to me. My body, my choice.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted tattoos, I could get tattoos. If I wanted to do whatever. And, I think having that freedom allowed me to step back and look at all of my choices and determine what was in alignment with me. And I think right now we're in this freaking beautiful period of time where we are destroying all of these constructs of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, like completely obliterating the 50s household concept of, when a woman would stay at home and literally be this slave to her husband. And I couldn't help but when reflecting on this topic, think about the fact that it wasn't until the 70s that women were allowed to have their own bank account and manage their own money. And now it's expected that women go out into the workforce and put in 50-50. And so there's been this distortion of the feminine and the masculine because women have entered into the workplace trying to prove themselves. And it often led to them being in this very masculine rooted energy that women have no, I mean, it's just not good for us. It's not our innate state of being. It takes us away from being able to receive and hold our power and our light, which the frequency of a woman is one of the most beautiful frequencies on earth. And to deny that in ourselves, I think has just created a ripple effect of now a lot of men being in their feminine and expecting this treatment from women. But jumping back to, I think, men and women entering into the workforce and, you know, almost mirroring each other in a way that created this awful, divisive, distorted imbalance.
Not allowing the gender or identity in which you identify with to be held in high regards in your own life, right? In your case, you were saying like women in the workforce not being able to be women, they needed to step into this man frame. 1,000%. No one should have to fit in a frame that they don't identify with, that doesn't resonate with them. However, and I could be misunderstanding you slightly, or we could just disagree on this, but I do think that, yes, as someone who identifies as a woman, holding true to my womanly energy is important. But what makes us so powerful is the fact that we have duality and we can unify that. So it's not about denying the masculine energy within me. I mean, I grew up in a very masculine energy myself, and I did see the struggle that I faced with that and the need for control and structure. But I think I've also struggled trying to dive directly into my feminine energy and say, let's make this all intuitive and flowy. And where is that that's where my power comes from, being able to flow and have guidance come in and use my intuition. All of that isn't as useful if there's no structure to put that intuition into form. There's no structure to, or foundation, not even like a structure where it needs to be a routine, but just like some kind of foundation in which I can build upon. So I think it's important to, yes, hone into that resonant gender identity energy that you hold, or non-binary that you hold, because you hold all of the spectrum of frequency within you, and you can either identify as that one piece while the others play, or you can identify as the spectrum of whole and identify as non-binary or they. But I do think it's important to understand that you need, in order to really be in your full power, you need both the divine masculine and the divine feminine. I create a structure and a routine that supports me as I let my intuition flow through, knowing that that structure can waver and resettle as I get new guidance in.
I wholeheartedly agree. And it is our responsibility to balance and embody the masculine and feminine. And I think part of my point was that I don't think the representation we've seen growing up is actually serving any of us. And
Oh, hell
so
no.
I'm here today sort of like I don't know. I want input. I'm like, how do we start to build anew? We're already kind of more than halfway through this deconstruction phase. But what is next? Because it's not working for us anymore, I guess, when it comes to dating specifically. And I really do think it's because of this distorted energy that we don't necessarily have these role models, or I guess great examples on TV even. Like there are beautiful representations of the feminine and masculine embodied and integrated as one. it just, I think until you're kind of operating near that frequency or kind of seeking it out, it's not going to be as obvious to you,
I
but it's out
absolutely
there.
agree. Yeah. And I do see that we're trying to shift in that direction. But when it comes to things like what we're seeing in media, it's not with the right intention in mind, right? The intention is make money. And if what's hot right now is to have queer representation, then great, we'll have that. But it doesn't have the heart behind it in what you're looking for, right? To actually shift and say, no, I'm not representing queer just for the fact of representing queer. Let's go in and be like, this is someone who's strong. Doesn't matter the color of their skin or what they identify as. Like, this is a strong person who is in good relations with another strong person. I think the way that we're looking at, my mind kind of got glitched out and stuck in workplace. But let's, like you said, pull it back into relationships. We grew up, as many of us did, with the Disney fairy tale where it was only masculine, hard, hero saving, the damsel in distress, weak little woman that needed to be kissed in order to be awoken. And even when she was awoken, she was quiet as fuck, right? Then we started to see a shift in certain things there, but we really need to start seeing women who are powerful, but still vulnerable and still intuitive, because that's what we are. We need to see men who are, creating structure and powerful, but are not diminishing and judgmental and controlling. And then the spectrum all in between is a little bit easier because they're paving the way, right? Queer people and people who are non-binary are coming out and paving their own way in this sense.
Well, I guess jumping back to the idea of embodied feminine and masculine energy as one integrated in you, it is our divine birthright to be full of ourselves. And by full of ourselves, I mean full of our energetic life force, our spirit, our soul, in our freaking bodies. And I think that part of what's happening, or for a very long time, this whole distortion was to take us away from feeling full of ourselves. And I'm a firm believer in filling your cup first and foremost before going out there into the world. But I started to ask myself, what am I even filling my cup with? Like, what is this frequency? What is it that's actually fueling me? And it gave me a new perception. Hold on.
Perspective?
Yeah. I'm like, is it perception or perspective? Same shit, right? So it gave me a new perspective on my energetic exchanges with men specifically. And I know I said I was straight in the last episode, but while we're all confessing to be queer, I mean, I fucking love women. I love
Hell
women
yeah.
so much. I'm like, I just accidentally almost gobbled my mic. I'm ovulating this weekend. And you know what? Today is the first day of Pisces season, and I honestly can't decide if I want to come or cry first.
Oh, why not both?
I mean, that's very Pisces. So
why not both, my dude? Which we'll get into sexual energy later. And I know I'm not going to divulge too much into my personal excursions, but like both.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did yesterday. And then went to the forest to recharge.
Yes, hell yeah. Get grounded, bitch.
Yep. I think the biggest thing for me when tuning into my feminine energy, and it's interesting because so many people look at me and make this assumption that I'm super feminine because I'm very curvy and voluptuous, and I guess from my outward appearance appear very feminine, but I've struggled with my feminine energy. And if I were to pinpoint exactly what it is about my feminine energy that either is part of my shadow work, my fear, or my resistance, it all comes down to trust. And I really do feel like trust requires this certain degree of surrendering. And there's this flow between surrendering and trust. And like you said before, being very fluid and open to receive, it takes some tricky moves sometimes to get into that embodiment because there's often a lot of icky things that come up before we can get to the point of it feeling good. And it usually comes down to guilt and shame in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, always, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's always been my problem when it comes to really embodying, because I also, like I already stated, grew up very masculine, even in the way, like I was always like a quote unquote tomboy. And then I really tried to dive into being feminine. It didn't feel right. Then I flip flop back and forth. And it's because I felt shameful. And it related to intimacy with partners and coming out about who I am. And I think all of this talk about masculine and feminine energies that live within us is identifying the relationship with yourself, right? That is the relationship with you. Those are frequencies within you in that inner universe, right? Tending to yourself that you need to have a relationship with and allow those to grow and allow those to shift and have a seat at the table. And when you have a relationship with yourself, there is no more guilt or shame or resistance. You can step into this and say, okay, well, I shifted now more into my divine feminine, and this is actually what I need. And then notice that there's too much flow without any structure, and it's a tsunami wave with like no stable like homes to stay in. And you're like, okay, I got to shift more here. And it's about having that comfortable, what's the word I'm looking for? Compassionate, I almost say compromise, compassionate relationship with yourself so you can try out different identities, try out different energies until you find the mold that fits you, until you create a new mold because you are a unique imprint. We all have masculine and feminine energies, yes, but the scale of to which is so unique to you. So identifying that and living in your authenticity by being truly you, whatever that looks like and sounds like, is having that healthy relationship with yourself. And that is 2 episodes ago, inner universe, accepting all parts of you, right? It's going inward.
So, yeah, I could sit here all day long and talk about how much I love being single and independent and I don't need anything from anyone, but I do. I love being in relationship. And so during my time of, well, singlehood and now celibacy, I am so sensitive to energy exchange. And I've come to realize that often why people come together at all or are drawn to each other is for the sheer act of exchanging energy, of
Yeah.
DNA information, of karmic soul contract. I mean, there's just so much that two souls can come together to exchange on an energetic level. And when you start to tune into this, you really start to see all the different ways it can show up and be of value to you. It's not just like this thing that's happening to be aware of. It's like alchemy. If you learn how to work with it, it's going to speed up your evolution, your ascension. It's going to skyrocket you into a
Fuck
totally different
yeah.
paradigm.
Hell yeah. But I think important to know that it could also do the opposite, right? When you're talking energy exchange and that we are craving something from someone, and why some people, and I don't disagree with the fact of like you need to do work, not take out the word need, but it's helpful to do some inner work and have a relationship with yourself before you have a relationship with someone else, is because there are so many things that we need that we can give ourselves, or that we need to give ourselves before we can take from somebody else. Because if
Totally.
I need to feel loved, and growing up, maybe I did not get that feeling, I did not have the energy exchange of pure, unjudgmental, uncontractal love coming in. Is that a word? Contractal?
It sounds sort of like fractal, so I'm
That's
into
true.
it.
I meant like, when you have like this,
Contractual?
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Something like that. But then if I'm not giving that to myself first, I'm trying to fill this empty cup with other people. And I'm either going to be disappointed or I'm going to attract people who are projecting all this unhealthy love and projecting it outward because they're not giving any to themselves. And now we're in this weird energy exchange. So, as much as there is so much work that gets done when you're in a relationship because you are exchanging energy and information, be mindful of what you can give yourself already, because you don't want to try to fill your cup solely on somebody else. You will be gravely disappointed. Trust me.
Ain't that the truth? I feel that so much. I think that's a perfect example of the distorted feminine energy is looking to be filled by something external. And there's a huge difference between looking to fill the void and then finding inspiration. And I think that
Yes.
the innate feminine energy in us is the source of inspiration.
Hell yeah. Mic drop.
We're done. Bye. But okay, let's talk about like you want to be in a relationship. Well, how do you begin? How do you begin to work on yourself? Like, what are if you don't believe into this bullshit that you have to be fully healed in order to enter a relationship, but you want to start somewhere. You want to at least like reflect on who you are, what you bring to the table, how you like to be loved, how you love. And I mean, it's pretty well known, I think, at this point that how we show up in relationships is often a result of our childhood traumas. So that is the first step, I would say.
Absolutely. It's
What are your
eyes in. Eyes in.
childhood
Check it out. Check
Well,
out what your inner child is going through. Check out what beliefs you're holding and have that relationship with yourself so that way you can identify. And here's the thing, if you're trying to have a romantic relationship, look at your other relationships. How do you feel satisfied by a good friendship? Is it because they're telling you what you're doing right and they're talking to you about it? Is it because you sit on the couch together and don't talk, you just spend quality time together? Like, it's like you were saying, those love languages, and it's constantly checking in with yourself, because when you tend to those traumas, then your love language or your attachment style might shift. And that's okay, right? There's that divine feminine. We're shifting in the way that we give love, in the way that we receive love. And it's not resisting that. It's saying, all right, well, let's give this shit a ride. A try. A ride?
a
Whatever.
try. Yeah. I like ride. I
Give
mean,
it a
it
ride.
can always jump out of the moving vehicle if you need to get away. It's interesting to think back on some of my relationships that we didn't even have the same concept of what a relationship is and why we come together. I've just recently, I think, come to terms and accepted that I want to be in a power couple. Like, I need a strong man next to me. And a lot of men are either intimidated by this, don't feel good enough. And I don't want to trigger that in men at all, but it does often seem to be the case. But some of my past relationships, the men just honestly were looking for a companion, which is fine, but obviously not going to satisfy me. And it, in the long run, didn't satisfy me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even looking at like what, like you said, even looking at your friendships, like if you want to sit around and do nothing together and kind of have that companion based relationship, cool. I'm here to grow and evolve at a rapid rate. I'm here to get shit done. Like, I need a man who's getting shit done. And so I'm so turned off by men who aren't driven. But that's besides the point. Enough about my relationship preferences.
Well, this is an ad, and as we know, Victoria is single, so please call the number below. No, I'm kidding.
You have to be vetted by Tara first.
Abso-fucking-lutely. And I'm not easy to go through. Okay? But something that's a good way to start when it comes to all of that is communication. right? So you're saying that you and your partners were not on the same page about these things. And from the get go, just fucking communicate. And I know it's not easy, but push yourself to do it. Write a letter, fucking call them and then hang up. I don't care what it is, but tell them. Because it's not about finding someone who's exactly like you, who exactly shows the type of love that you need or that they need the type of love that you give. No. If you want to grow and you want to evolve and you want to be a power couple, you have to be able to say, okay, this person is worth or not worth me shifting and putting more intention in the way that I give love. The way that I give love is words of affirmation and physical touch. And words of affirmation is not Andrew's. I mean, he enjoys it, but for him, it's actually the opposite. When I tell him, wow, I'm really proud of you, you did a great job, he feels I'm belittling him. Not because I'm coming off disingenuine, but he feels like no one should have to tell him these things. He should feel that himself, which is his own shadow. That's a whole nother fucking story. But I purposely am like, okay, my love language was not necessarily acts of service. Your girl's a lazy bitch. I don't want to get up and get you something. But I purposely push myself to say, but this is how he'll feel love. And I'm choosing you because I love you. And I'm going to do that for you. Similarly, as physical touch is my way of giving out, it's also my way of giving in. And not that Andrew wasn't a physical touch person, but I'm like a straight up fucking monkey or koala. And like, you will not breathe. Like, I exist on your skin. You know what I mean? And we came to an understanding where, but through communication, I was like, but this is what I need. And he's probably going to be embarrassed that I'm sharing this, but like my third eye, he like once we had this conversation, he started like rapid fire kissing my third eye. And he's like, I'm recharging you. Like, so when he sees that I'm like, just like, even if I'm not sad, but just like slumped on the couch, he just comes over like violent. And he knows like the more violent the physical touch is, the better. So like, if I'm like not feeling him, I know it sounds so bad, but like it's so true. And he's so delicate. I like punch him all the time. I'm like, come on, buddy. Oh, you know, and he's like, beep. But like I'll like lay down straight and like put my arms out. And he knows that means I need weighted blanket, which means he just like literally dies. Like his whole body's just like bleh, on top of me. And that wasn't his style. And I also have to recognize that since it's not his, I need to remember that I may need to communicate if I'm not getting enough. Or understand that his way of showing love is acts of service. So when I'm not feeling love, I need to remind myself, well, he did all these things for me and that's how he shows it. But it wouldn't be without communication that either of us would understand this, and we would be down fucking over long time ago if we didn't have these hard conversations.
And you don't know until you know, right? So sometimes the
Absolutely.
conversation, you may not even realize the conversation you should have had with an ex until years down the road where you're like, wow, it actually probably would have worked with them if we would have just worked through this one thing. But at the same time, you
Maybe
ended
not
for
at
a
that
reason
moment,
and it's
right?
fine. Yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you're right. It's not even that maybe this would have worked, but maybe this is what I need. Or maybe this is what I don't need.
totally.
And,
Yeah.
you know, like we both said, we've had shitty partners. And like I could sit here and list all the ways they were fucking shitty, but I could also be super fucking grateful because if I didn't go through that shit with these relationships, whether they be hookups or boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever, like I needed to go through that in order to be able to communicate, in order to have the relationship with myself that I can share with Andrew and say, this is what I need. And I know in those times when we're in toxic relationships and when we just got broken up with or rejected, that it feels really hard. It's really just an opportunity to learn a little more about yourself, whether that be what you need or don't need.
I want to jump back to the topic of love languages. I know you were spitting out the ones that you like to give and to receive. And I know it's a commonly known thing at this point, but if you haven't taken the love languages quiz, I highly encourage you to
Oh,
do so. It's so fascinating. And so I believe it tells you how you like to receive love, not
hmm
necessarily how you like to give it.
I
So
think
it's
it's both.
Is it both? Okay, I
Or
haven't taken it in a long time,
or
but
there might be other quizzes that do both.
very cool. Okay. It is important to know both because back in the day when I took it, it was mostly how do I like to receive love?
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't think I ever was able to, I wasn't mature enough to clearly communicate what I needed. And one of my top love languages is physical touch. And as a water sign, I believe us water signs really do need touch. I, in my time being celibate, have scheduled massages. Like, I find ways to receive touch because it is so important to me. It feeds me. And I'm kind of like, wait, Tara, like, can't we be at the point where instead of like Netflix and chill or like hooking up or whatever, we just have like massage buddies? Like, can we make massage
Please.
buddies a thing?
Please. But also I would
Yeah.
need to like learn how to like probably be a better masseuse first. But yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
YouTube it.
Well, I'm a really great massage therapist. So
Fuck yeah. Okay, I'm so in then. Because then I get the good massage and you get the mediocre
I
massage. So,
know.
wait,
Well,
sorry,
I'm a
sorry.
good teacher too. So,
Yay. Okay, teach me. But I like
uh,
that you mention giving, that your love language is now coming from other sources. And I think as we continue to talk about relationships and love, broaden your spectrum from just a romantic relationship. I think Victoria had mentioned in a previous episode, you don't need to reserve your love for anybody. So if you know how you want to receive love, tell your friends, tell your fucking parents, tell your coworkers, hey, listen, that's actually the opposite of my love language. So don't fucking do that because that pisses me off. Do this instead, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
there's a good practice, right? As you're trying to communicate, because it's harder to communicate when it's with a romantic partner because you really want it to work. When you care about someone and you're scared about messing up. So practice on those coworkers, on those friends, and on yourself. If physical touch is your love language, physically touch yourself, girl.
That's what I be doing Friday nights.
Oh, okay,
But let's go
okay.
back to what you just said about not wanting to mess things up, because this is another paradigm that I'd like us to start to shift away from and look at it in a more from an energetic perspective. If you are not in alignment with someone, you're going to get the signs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important you, one, listen to the signs and then determine what you do with that information. Because I think for so long we hide these bits and pieces of ourselves in order to keep them asking us out on more dates or to like stay together longer, but it's all going to bubble to the surface eventually, whether it be in a couple months or 20 years. It's gonna happen eventually.
Yeah.
And it's probably only going to get, your sense of self in it is probably going to get lost the longer you wait.
And it'll be more complicated because imagine being on the other side. You're falling in love with this person, and then one day this person comes out, they're like, well, actually. And then they're like dumbfounded. And that's when they're going to be like, you've been lying to me this whole time. I'm out. Right?
Totally.
So why not take a look at those feelings that are arising? But as Victoria said, a lot of the ways that we are involved in relationships stem from our childhood, whether that's traumatic or not. The way that we saw our caretakers show love to ourselves and to each other really plays into our relationships. So, what I would suggest you do is when you get that feeling in your gut, when you get that, is this a red flag? You take the moment to ask yourself, where is this coming from? Okay, because it's two main avenues: shadow, fear, anxiety, trauma, inner child shit, or intuition. And there's a lot of times where we ignore our intuition and those red flags and we say, but it's going to be okay and they're going to change and we're going to be okay. And that's when we get in toxic relationships, lose our sense of self, and don't feel that we're good enough to even leave. So when that feeling arises, you need to ask yourself, okay, well, what is it that I am afraid of? I'm afraid that they're not going to like me for who I am. Okay. Is that due to something that happened in the past? Something they're actively showing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or from literally nowhere, but you just have this gut feeling. I tend to listen to my gut feeling. If it's coming from that fear, then it's my choice to say, am I going to listen to fear or am I going to fight past it no matter how scary it is? So it's so important to listen to that intuition, listen to that fear so you can identify who's speaking and say, okay, I have a bad feeling about this person. This does not sit right with me. They didn't do anything wrong to me, and I didn't have any childhood relations that were similar to this. So something is telling me this is not right. Or on the flip coin, I don't feel good about this, but you know, my dad was this way and this way, and I'm projecting outward, or my dad was this way and this way, and so is this person, and I'm now not, right? So it's a tricky thing, but without the relationship to yourself, you're not going to get anywhere.
Except further away from yourself.
True. And probably further into more toxic or at least non-beneficial relationships, because sometimes you have relationships that were healthy but literally led nowhere, no growth or anything, which is fine, I guess, but also,
What are you doing?
yeah, why waste your time, I guess? If you're not enjoying yourself, like, why be there?
Let's talk about the dance between anxiety and intuition.
It's a crazy fucking dance, and it's hard to decipher for sure.
You know, if you're not familiar with your attachment styles, that's another thing I recommend looking up. It definitely corresponds to your childhood traumas, but then also past relationship traumas. And the whole anxious, avoidant, secure. I mean, how many people do you know who are secure?
I would say I'm almost secure.
But I mean, aside from you.
Yeah, no. And that is not because of the way I grew up at all. That is because of hard fucking work. And only recently.
No, I'm talking about other people, not you. Sorry.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, even I don't know other people, but for me,
Oh, you don't? Okay.
who have a secure relationship, who have a secure
Yeah.
attachment, not really. Wait, clarify secure attachment again.
That you aren't anxious or avoidant. You are just comfortable. I think there's almost this detached quality to
Oh,
being
then yeah, I'm
secure.
definitely a secure attachment.
I think you are too.
And I'm not saying that I don't have fears or anxieties. And again, like I was just saying, like it took me forever. Like the first couple years that me and Andrew together, it was very not secure. I always needed to know what the next step was, that he was going to be there, right? My fear of abandonment really took hold, like even in the first year of us being together. But with hard work and creating a new relationship with myself, I now have that secure relationship. And I think most people don't, because most people don't see that growing up. And I think another thing that you mentioned that's so important is it's not just your childhood trauma. Every experience you have leaves an energetic print on your soul body. So you may have been secure, and all it takes is one partner who makes you the complete and utter opposite. Now you're an anxious attachment. But you have the tools within you to look at yourself and say, let's go inward. Let's meet my shadow. Let's meet my inner child. Let's tend to them. Let's fix my beliefs and grow. So now you're more welcome to have those secure attachments.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it really does come down to having a partner who you feel safe to face all of the pain and trauma and patterns that are no longer serving you, and who will continue to choose you as you evolve and change. I think sometimes we often fall in love with these glimpses of people's higher selves. I know that
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much guilty of this, where It's way beyond falling in love with potential. It's, I see your light. I see you for all that you are. And I love you despite all of the other bullshit that might prevent us from being together. And so I think when you're ebbing and flowing in a relationship, because there's always kind of this roller coaster wave you ride in being in a long-term commitment, where you have to keep choosing that person, that light that you initially saw, that you fell in love with. And I'm so happy you and Andrew continue to choose each other. I really love Tara and Andrew's relationship because well, I wouldn't say you look alike, but I think that there's, those couples where they have the same frequency in their eyes. It all comes down to the eyes, where you see, through the window of someone's soul. Tara and Andrew have the same soul frequency.
That's so interesting because Andrew is not very spiritual, as I said a million times. But since we started dating, we both agreed we're twin flames, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit later. I don't even want to get into that. But we both noticed that as well, because we are very different people who grew up very differently, and yet we still hold this same frequency. And you're right, there is such major ebbs and flows within any type of relationship, romantic or not, right? That's what came through for me at the end of last episode, is that there are cycles within your relationship. And you have to understand that each of you are in your own cycle, riding this other circle. It's just circles in a circle of your relationship cycle. And when you can recognize the patterns and, what times of year you guys are aligned in your low point and tend to fight, or what times of year you're aligned in your high point and you have like the best sex ever, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, recognizing that cycle helps you recognize where we should be at our highest right now and we're not. So there's either something that needs to be looked at, grown, or no matter how much we're choosing love, we're not hitting the spot that we're supposed to hit. And with becoming a secure attachment person, I really needed to let go of the attachment to the outcome, right? With my fear of abandonment, I always wanted to know that Andrew and I, like, once I was like, oh, this is my person, I was like, okay, when are we getting married? It was like fucking year in. I'm like, when are we getting married? He's like, I literally don't even know your middle name. I'm like, and I needed to know that he was going to be there forever. And I know that a lot of people have this anxiety as well. Like, I'm putting in all this time. I love this person. What if they leave me? But if you can be present in the moment and recognize that even in your hard times, this person still lights up your heart, right? Even if he's not making me laugh, even if we're in a dry spell, even if we're fighting over stupid stuff, does his frequency, if I, like Victoria said, put all that bullshit aside, does his frequency still light me up? Because as our frequencies cycle and grow and evolve and change, we may not be on the same frequency anymore. So what I started telling Andrew and what I started bringing to the table, which maybe sounds bad, I hope not, but now is, I love you. And right now, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But at any moment that changes, just tell me. And we won't do this anymore. And same with me, I'll just tell you, because it's better to be happy than not. And even in our times where we're fighting, I know that he still makes me happy. But the second I know that he's not, the second my intuition is like, nope, the second I see red flags is when I say, okay, well, this was amazing. Thank you, because I would not be the person I am without you. But now we go somewhere else. And that sucks. But that's the cycle of relationships, friendships too. Sometimes you're going, and then you got to shift into the next level. And that person doesn't shift with you. And there's a grieving period of who you used to be, of what the relationship used to be, whether it stays together or not, right? I've cried over what Andrew and I used to be because I loved it. But I also love who we are. Just got to be choosing to evolve and hope for the best, I guess.
I find that radical honesty is an essential code to getting the most out of a relationship and being satisfied in partnership. And I am so grateful that you are able to be in a relationship where you can be yourself and he can be himself and you love each other. You may not always like each other, but
Mm-hmm.
there's that deep love. And I think going back to the word or words, I love you, for me, I've realized that when I tell someone I love them in a romantic relationship, it really comes down to I like who I am when I'm with you.
Oh,
And that is
yes.
such a good like marker of do I like who I am when I'm with this person?
That's a great question for any relationship, even not just romantic.
Totally. Yeah.
Mm. I know I look like I'm contemplating that question. I'm not. I love who I am when I'm with Andrew. Like I said, a million times better person than I've ever been because of Andrew, um, because of who he let me be, which was me. And that's why I'm better. But that is such a good fucking question to ask yourself. I think for me, especially in friendships,
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to attune to the frequency of the group. And then all of a sudden you start recognizing that, no, I don't like when people do that. And why am I being that person? And I think something else when we're talking about that radical honesty, or not even the radical honesty, but just recognizing that you're in a low, but still choosing to stay there. The difference between that and recognizing it is no longer working, I think, is the drive to fix. If I'm in a relationship and we're in a really really bad time, but I'm like, no, let's talk about this and let's fix this, then no matter how ugly we look to each other right now, there's still love. But when we're in a downfall and I don't care to talk to him, not that it's fear stopping me, but I don't care to bring up these topics and I don't care to try to fix this because I'm tired, then it might not be working anymore. And that's not always the case, but I feel when you start to lose any type of anger, and people will say it all or emotion, and people will say it all the time, when you're fighting and you're angry at each other, there's still love because that passion is showing up in emotion. And when you feel numb and emotionless is when there's the actual problem.
This whole topic has me reflecting back on relationships where I was always reflecting on what was happening in the relationship, that I never got to be present in the moment.
Mm.
And, now in hindsight, I probably just wasn't satisfied by the person in present moment. So I was looking for all these things to fix because I
Mm-hmm.
saw it as this way I was evolving and growing, or at least getting something out of the relationship. But I do find that, you can either be in denial or not wanting to address the problem. So it's like a don't ask, don't
Yeah.
tell. I'm going to do my thing. You do yours. We'll come
Yeah.
together. We'll coexist as partners. More that like companion type relationship. And then, of course, there's the relationships where you're constantly trying to like work on things. You're probably always fighting. But like, can we start to normalize being in these relationships where we come together and we feel really fucking good? And we're also okay when we're not feeling good, that they'll love us when we're not our happy, bright self, that, they also, for me, I need my solitude. I am very introspective. I need my alone time. I'd love a partner that I can be alone with together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd want someone who honors me in that form, as well as my extroverted social butterfly wanting to go out into the world and spread my light and love everyone self.
Absolutely. It's definitely important for a healthy relationship to have someone love you when you're at your worst. And also, that love means that they don't need to fix or do anything except for be there and just giving you what you need in that moment, what you're asking for in that moment. And that's why I am grateful for Andrew, because he doesn't even ask. I just come out of the yoga room crying and he's like, okay. He's like, you want a hug? I'm like, yep. Doesn't ask me why I'm crying, doesn't need to know unless it's something that I need to share,
Mm-hmm.
right? We are going to go through cycles, and it is so much easier, trust me, if you know your own and can tell him. Like the amount of times I've gone to Andrew and been like, hey, Andrew, for the last 3 years, we fought at the end of August. So let's just be mindful that it's probably coming up. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, here it is. Here it is. So let's not be angry. Let's just know that this is the time where we hash out some things that have been bothering us in the past couple months. You know, when you're able to recognize your group cycle as well as your individual cycles, you can tend to each other without having to think that something's wrong with your relationship, just knowing that, oh, we're in a lull, or I'm in a lull. And that's what creating a safe space in your relationship is.
I wanted to talk about this in between state that those of us who are single and attempting to date find ourselves in, and that is called situationships, and is counter to, I think, what a relationship can give you. Um, Situations are absolute bullshit if one person is expecting a relationship and the other person has this in and out half-ass breadcrumbing energy.
Can you elaborate a little bit and explain what you mean by a situationship?
So, a situationship usually first begins by meeting someone on the internet. That's a pretty common way, but I mean, it can happen however you meet the person. So, the premise is you have relationship type activities you engage in, but there is no commitment. One person or both people are seeing others, which is fine. That's what dating is. But this is often what happens when one person or both people come in without the intention of a relationship, but then one person or both people fall for each other. I guess if both people are falling for each other, it would just probably turn into a relationship, so you'd think. But what I'm seeing is this avoidance of responsibility, of accountability, of really having to step up to the plate and be the best version of yourself for this person you're engaged with in relationship type activities. And you can have situationships that mimic a relationship and everyone's on the same page and it's fine and great, but it's usually rooted in friendship or a clear, well-stated, communicated intention of we're in this for X, Y, and Z. But in dating today, there is a lack of responsibility and accountability, and it's fucking bullshit, and it needs to end now. Death to the fuck boys. You're done.
Ooh,
You're
ooh.
done.
I'm glad I'm out of the game because that sounds like a mess. And also, I was kind of a fuck boy, so death to me, right?
Well, every day, every moment, every breath. I'll forever be fascinated by each person's individual blueprint and their psychology and how they show up in the world. And I think that's why I'm so intrigued by relationships, not only my own, but my friends. I love hearing about every little detail. But I think it's because there's this beautiful mirroring that show mirroring. Did I slur that enough?
Mirroring, mirroring,
Mirroring. Mirror.
mirroring.
Yeah, so there's this mirroring that happens when you show up ready to love someone and you hope that they're receptive to you, your shadow and all. And there's always this like energy exchange, right? Through this mirroring process, but sometimes you see parts of yourself that you don't necessarily like in the other person. which, we call that triggering. Uh, but I think learning how to work with the triggers, or learning when to walk away when a trigger is actually not here to teach you or evolve you in any way, it's a clear sign. It's that red flag saying, no, 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 this isn't for me. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to jump back to talking about anxiety, because I really do feel an extreme amount of anxiety. I'm curious, where in your body, when it comes to feeling anxiety in a relationship, where in your body do you feel it?
Definitely like in my womb area is where
Ooh,
my anxiety sits.
wow. Could you describe the feeling?
It's like, I don't want to say heavy because it's not, right? I feel like anger and sadness for me feel very solid and heavy. Anxiety is very flighty, but it still does feel like a, oof, like I just like drop down a little bit. Like I have to like crouch over and like cradle my womb area to say like, oh God, like almost as if I don't feel good, right? Like this doesn't feel good. I feel sick to my stomach because something's not right. Similarly, when it's that intuition as opposed to anxiety, it's in that same space for me, in the womb space. So when it feels the opposite, even if it's not a good intuition like that, like, ooh, like it still feels that like drop in, but like a uplifted dropped in. I know it's not a great way of explaining it, but that's why for me it's easy to recognize the difference between who's speaking, my anxiety or my intuition, because it lives in the same part of my body. So it's how I react to that that recognizes for me, oh, this is my anxiety of fear of attachment. And this is my intuition telling me it's a red flag.
Mm.
What about you?
I feel it in my heart, and sometimes in my third chakra, in like my solar plexus area, um, because I think sometimes anxiety has eaten away at my sense of self, my
Mm,
sense of power. I think it also represents giving my power away. But then I'll also feel it very strongly in my third eye and crown, where it's just like my head literally feels like it's about to pop off. And I usually get those hits once very strongly, and then it'll kind of pop up in different ways if I'm not listening, or if I
mm.
continue doing something that isn't in my highest alignment.
Mirroring in your reality until you finally face it, for sure.
Yeah.
Just as you get those red flags, that ping of information, right? When it's not going well, we also get those pings of information when something feels really aligned, even if it makes no logical sense, right? Those people who come into our life, like Victoria and I, who said, I fucking know this frequency. This is very familiar to me. Or, like I mentioned, like Andrew and I both stating that we're these twin flames, right? This is under the concept that we come down to earth with a soul contract. That's what our next episode is going to be looking at. What types of soul contracts do we sign on for, and how do they play into the relationships we have, whether that be romantically or not?
I want I kind of wanted to share where I get my pings if someone's right for me, in my clit, and I love getting hits there. Obviously, well, I mean intuitive
Oh,
hits.
oh, she loves getting hit there. Boom. So tune in next week to find out why she loves getting hit there. No, I'm kidding. But you should tune in because that's what we'll be talking about. We love you. Thank you for joining us.
Love you.